Elliot's shoes were soaked, the rain seeping through the holes in his soles as he trudged down the empty street. The weight of his rejection heavier than the backpack slung over his shoulder. At 17, he'd learned that love was conditional. And for him, it came with a price he couldn't pay, hiding who he was. Tonight, like too many nights before, he was alone, cast out by another foster family who couldn't handle his truth. The small town of Willow Creek, Ohio, was suffocatingly quiet, its streets lined with tidy houses that glowed with warmth Elliot could only dream of. He pulled his hoodie tighter against the October chill, his breath visible in the crisp air. He was used to this being turned away, being told he was too much. But tonight, the sting felt sharper, like a blade slicing through the last thread of hope he'd been clinging to. His latest foster parents, the Millers, had been kind at first. They'd promised stability, a bed, a chance. But when Elliot came out to them, their smiles faded, replaced by cold lectures about sin and fixing him. By morning, his bags were packed, and he was back on the street. He stopped under a flickering streetlight, his hazel eyes scanning the horizon for somewhere to go. The local shelter was full, and the church that ran it wasn't exactly welcoming to kids like him. Elliot had been gay since he knew what love felt like. But in Willow Creek, that was a crime no one forgave. He'd been in and out of foster homes since he was 9. Bounced around like a problem no one wanted to solve. Each rejection carved a deeper wound. But he refused to let it break him. Not yet. As he walked, the sound of laughter caught his ear, a rare sound in his world. Across the park, a group of kids chased each other around a swing set, their voices bright against the dusk. A man stood nearby, watching them with a quiet smile. He was older, maybe 40, with broad shoulders and a face that carried the weight of hard years but softened with kindness. His salt and pepper hair caught the last of the sunlight, and his flannel shirt was rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. Elliot didn't know why he stopped to watch, but something about the man felt safe. "Hey, you okay?" The man's voice was low, steady, cutting through Elliot's thoughts. He hadn't realized he'd been staring. Elliot tensed, ready to bolt. "I'm fine," he muttered, pulling his backpack straps tighter. The man tilted his head, his dark eyes searching Elliot's face. "You don't look fine. It's freezing out here, and you're soaked. Got somewhere to go?" Elliot's instinct was to lie, to say he had a place, plan. But the exhaustion in his bones betrayed him, and the words caught in his throat. He shook his head, barely meeting the man's gaze. "I'm Marcus," the man said, extending a hand. "Those are my kids over there. We're not perfect, but we've got room. Come with us. Get warm. Eat something. No strings." Elliot hesitated. He'd heard promises like this before, kind words that turned sour when people learned who he was. But Marcus's eyes held no judgment, only a quiet sincerity that made Elliot's chest ache. Against his better judgment, he nodded. Marcus's house was a chaotic symphony of noise and warmth. The living room was cluttered with toys, books, and mismatched furniture, but it felt alive. His 5 kids, Lila, 14, Noah, 12, Emma, 10, Sam, 8, and Rosie, 6, tumbled in, their voices overlapping as they argued over who got the last slice of pizza. Marcus moved through the chaos with ease. tossing a blanket to Elliot and pointing him toward the couch. "Sit," Marcus said. "You look like you haven't eaten in days." Elliot didn't argue. The pizza was lukewarm but tasted like heaven. And the blanket smelled faintly of laundry detergent and home. For the first time in months, he felt his shoulders relax. But the fear lingered. What would happen when Marcus found out? Would this be another door slammed in his face? As the kids settled down, Marcus sat across from Elliot, his hands clasped. "So, what's your story, kid?" Elliot's heart raced. He could lie, play it safe. But something about Marcus's steady gaze made him want to be honest, even if it cost him. "I'm gay," he said quietly, bracing for the inevitable shift in Marcus's expression. It didn't come. Marcus just nodded, his face unreadable but not unkind. "That why you're out here on your own?" Elliot swallowed hard. "Yeah. Foster families don't exactly line up to keep me once they know." Marcus leaned back, his eyes softening. "That's their loss, not yours. You're welcome here, Elliot. Long as you need." The words hit like a tidal wave, and Elliot fought to keep his composure. He wanted to believe Marcus, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. Still, for tonight, he let himself hope. Maybe this time would be different. The next morning, Elliot woke to the smell of pancakes and the sound of Rosie singing off-key. The house was already alive, the kids bickering over syrup while Marcus flipped pancakes with a practiced hand. Elliot sat at the table, feeling like an intruder in a world he didn't belong to. But Lila, the oldest, slid a plate in front of him with a shy smile. "You're not like the others," she said, her voice matter-of-fact. "You're quiet. I like that." Elliot didn't know how to respond, so he just ate, savoring the warmth of the food and the strange sense of belonging. Marcus caught his eye from across the kitchen and winked, as if to say, "You're okay here." For the first time in years, Elliot let himself believe it might be true. But Willow Creek wasn't as welcoming as Marcus's home. The school. Elliot faced whispers and glares. The word fag hissed under breaths as he passed. He kept his head down. But the hostility was a familiar weight. Marcus's kids, though, were different. Lila walked with him to class, her sharp tongue silencing anyone who dared say a word. Noah, quieter but fiercely loyal, shared his lunch when Elliot's was stolen. The younger ones, Emma, Sam, and Rosie, treated him like a big brother, their affection disarming in its simplicity. Still, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that this was temporary. Marcus was kind, but kindness had limits. He'd seen it before, people who meant well until the truth of who he was became too much. So he kept his guard up, waiting for the inevitable. One night, as the kids slept, Marcus found Elliot on the porch, staring at the stars. "You don't have to tell me everything," Marcus said, sitting beside him. "But I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong. I grew up in foster care too. Didn't have anyone till I made my own family." Elliot's throat tightened. "Why are you doing this? Taking me in? I mean, you don't even know me." Marcus chuckled softly. "Because I see you, Elliot. And I know a good kid when I meet one. You're not defined by what they say you are." For the first time in years, Elliot let himself cry, not out of pain, but out of something he hadn't felt in so long, hope. The weeks that followed were a fragile dance between hope and fear for Elliot. Marcus's home was a haven, but the world outside its walls was anything but. Willow Creek High School was a battlefield of whispered slurs and pointed stares, where Elliot's existence seemed to offend simply because he was himself. He'd learned to navigate it head down, mouth shut, but the weight of it pressed harder now that he had something to lose. Lila became his fiercest ally. 14. She was a force of nature, her dark braids swinging as she called out anyone who dared mutter a word against Elliot. "They're just jealous," she told him one day as they walked home from school, her voice sharp with conviction. "You're real, and they're too scared to be." Her words stuck with him, a small anchor in the storm. Marcus, too, was a steady presence. He didn't pry, didn't push Elliot to spill his past, but his quiet support was unshakable. He'd leave extra pancakes on Elliot's plate, ask him to help with small chores like fixing a squeaky door or teaching Rosie how to tie her shoes. It was mundane, but to Elliot, it felt like being seen not as a problem, but as a person. Still, the fear lingered. Elliot couldn't shake the memory of every home that had spit him out once they learned he was gay. Marcus seemed different. But what if he wasn't? What if the kids turned on him? What if this warmth was just another illusion waiting to shatter? One afternoon, while helping Marcus in the garage, Elliot's guard slipped. They were sorting through old tools, the air thick with the scent of oil and sawdust, when Marcus asked about his dreams. "What do you want, Elliot? Not just now, but down the line." The question caught him off guard. No one had ever asked him that, not foster parents, not caseworkers. He hesitated, then said, "I want to be a writer. Tell stories that matter. Stories like mine." His voice was quiet, almost embarrassed, as if admitting it made it less real. Marcus nodded, his hands stilling on a wrench. "That's a good dream. You've got a voice, kid. Don't let anyone take it from you." The words hit deeper than Elliot expected, stirring something he hadn't felt in years: ambition. He started writing again, scribbling in a notebook Marcus gave him, pouring out the pain and hope of his life. It was raw, messy, but it was his. But the peace was short-lived. Word spread in Willow Creek that Marcus had taken in that gay kid, and the town's undercurrent of prejudice bubbled to the surface. At the grocery store, Marcus overheard whispers about bad influences on his kids. Church. The pastor pulled him aside, suggesting Elliot might be better off elsewhere. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't waver. "Elliot's family," he said simply, and walked away. The tension escalated at school. A group of older boys, led by a senior named Tyler, targeted Elliot with relentless cruelty. They'd shove him in the halls, leave notes in his locker with words that cut deeper than fists. One day, during lunch, Tyler cornered him in the courtyard. "You think you belong here?" he sneered, his friends snickering behind him. "Marcus is just pitying you. You're a freak." Elliot's fists clenched, but he didn't swing. He'd learned long ago that fighting back only made it worse. Instead, he walked away, his heart pounding with a mix of rage and shame. Lila found him later, sitting behind the bleachers, his face buried in his knees. "Don't let them win," she said fiercely, sitting beside him. "You're stronger than they'll ever be." Elliot wanted to believe her, but the words felt hollow. That night, he sat in his room, really just a corner of the attic with a mattress and a lamp, and wrote until his hand cramped. He wrote about the pain, the rejection, the flicker of hope Marcus's family had given him. It was the only way he could keep from breaking. Marcus noticed the change in him. Over dinner, he caught Elliot's quietness, the way his eyes stayed fixed on his plate. "Something happened at school?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Elliot shrugged, but Noah spoke up. "It's Tyler and his idiots. They're picking on him." The table went quiet. Marcus's face hardened, not with anger but with resolve. "Elliot, you don't have to face this alone. We're in your corner." The younger kids nodded, Rosie tugging at Elliot's sleeve. "You're my brother now," she said, her gap-toothed grin unwavering. Elliot's throat tightened. He wanted to say thank you, to tell them how much it meant, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he nodded, hoping they understood. The next day, Marcus showed up at school, his presence commanding as he met with the principal. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make threats, but his message was clear: Elliot was his kid, and no one was going to hurt him without a fight. The principal promised to handle Tyler, but Elliot knew better than to trust empty assurances. Bullies like Tyler didn't stop because of detentions. Sure enough, the harassment didn't end. It grew quieter. Sneakier notes slipped into his backpack. Shoves when no one was looking. Elliot kept it to himself, not wanting to burden Marcus or the kids. But Lila noticed, her sharp eyes missing nothing. One evening, as they washed dishes together, she said, "You don't have to protect us. You know, we're tougher than we look." Elliot smiled faintly, but the weight of her words stayed with him. Maybe he wasn't alone anymore. Maybe this family was different. Winter settled over Willow Creek, blanketing the town in snow and silence. For Elliot, the cold was more than physical, it was the chill of knowing he was still an outsider. Despite Marcus's warmth, the bullying at school hadn't stopped, only shifted into subtler cruelties. Tyler and his crew no longer confronted him openly, but their whispers followed him like shadows. And the word faggot still appeared scrawled on his locker in Sharpie. Elliot buried himself in his writing, filling pages with stories of boys like him lost, searching, but never broken. The notebook Marcus had given him was nearly full, each word a rebellion against the world that tried to erase him. Writing was his refuge, but it couldn't shield him from everything. One freezing afternoon, as he walked home with Lila and Noah, Tyler's group ambushed them. They appeared from an alley, their breath clouding in the air as they blocked the sidewalk. Tyler's smirk was sharp, his eyes glinting with malice. Still hiding behind Marcus's kids. He taunted. "What's it like, knowing you're just his charity case?" Lila stepped forward, her fists clenched. "Back off, Tyler. You're pathetic." Tyler laughed, but his gaze stayed on Elliot. "You don't belong here, freak. Why don't you do everyone a favor and leave?" Before Elliot could respond, Noah shoved past, his usually shy demeanor replaced by fury. "He's more family than you'll ever have," he snapped, his voice trembling but firm. Tyler's friends laughed, but the moment stretched taut, like a wire about to snap. Then Tyler lunged, shoving Noah hard enough to send him sprawling into the snow. Elliot's restraint broke. He tackled Tyler, his fists flying before he could think. The fight was messy, desperate, a blur of snow and pain. By the time Lila pulled him off, both he and Tyler were bruised, blood trickling from Tyler's nose. The walk home was silent, Noah nursing a scraped elbow, Lila's jaw tight with worry. Elliot's hands shook, not from the cold but from the realization of what he'd done. He'd fought back, and it felt good, but it also terrified him. What if this got back to Marcus? What if this was the excuse he needed to send Elliot away? When they got home, Marcus was waiting, his face unreadable as Lila recounted what happened. Elliot braced himself, expecting a lecture, a rejection. Instead, Marcus pulled him into a hug, his arms strong and steady. "You're not in trouble," he said firmly. "You protected Noah. That's what family does." Elliot's eyes burned, and he buried his face in Marcus's shoulder, unable to speak. For the first time, he felt like he belonged not just in the house, but in the family. But the fight had consequences. Tyler's parents, influential in Willow Creek, demanded a meeting with the school board. They painted Elliot as a troubled kid, a danger to their son, conveniently ignoring Tyler's months of harassment. The principal, eager to avoid a scandal, suggested Elliot transfer to another school. Marcus fought back, his voice calm but unyielding as he defended Elliot's right to stay. The meeting was a circus, with townsfolk whispering about Marcus's reckless decision to take in a problem like Elliot. But Marcus didn't flinch. "Elliot's my son," he said, the words cutting through the room like a blade. "And I'll fight for him like I fight for any of my kids." Elliot, sitting in the back, felt his chest tighten. "Son." The word was foreign, heavy with meaning he wasn't sure he deserved. But Marcus's conviction was a lifeline, pulling him from the edge of despair. Back at home, the kids rallied around him. Emma drew him a picture of a rainbow, her small hands careful with the colors. Sam offered him his favorite comic book, saying, "You're cooler than Spider-Man." Rosie just hugged him, her tiny arms fierce. Their acceptance was a balm, but it also made Elliot ache for the years he'd spent without it. That night, Marcus found him in the attic, scribbling in his notebook. "You're a fighter, Elliot," he said, sitting on the edge of the mattress. "Not just out there, but in here." He tapped his chest. "That's what makes you special." Elliot's voice was barely a whisper. "What if I mess this up? What if I'm not worth it?" Marcus's eyes softened. "You're worth it. Always have been." The words stayed with Elliot long after Marcus left. A quiet promise that maybe, just maybe, he could stop running. Spring brought a cautious warmth to Willow Creek. But for Elliot, the thaw was more than physical. Marcus's home had become a sanctuary, a place where he could breathe without fear of judgment. The kids treated him like a sibling, their bickering and laughter weaving him into the fabric of their lives. Lila taught him how to braid her hair. Noah shared his obsession with sci-fi novels, and the younger ones dragged him into their games of tag and hide-and-seek. For the first time, Elliot felt like he had a family not perfect, but real. But the outside world wasn't as kind. The school board meeting had left a mark, and while Tyler's bullying had quieted, the town's whispers hadn't. Elliot overheard them at the diner, the gas station, the library. Marcus is too good for that kid. What's a single dad doing with a boy like that? The words stung, but Elliot kept them to himself, not wanting to burden Marcus. One afternoon, while helping Marcus fix the porch steps, Elliot noticed a letter tucked under a toolbox. It was from the foster agency, a routine check-in, but the words temporary placement jumped out at him. His stomach dropped. Temporary. The word was a reminder that this life, this family, could be taken away. He shoved the letter back, his hands trembling, and threw himself into the work, hammering nails with more force than necessary. Marcus noticed. "Something eating you, kid?" he asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Elliot shook his head, his throat tight. "Just wondering how long this lasts." Marcus set down his hammer, his eyes steady. "This isn't temporary, Elliot. Not for me. Not for the kids. You're part of us now." Elliot wanted to believe him, but doubt was a stubborn shadow. He'd been burned too many times to trust fully, even someone as steady as Marcus. Still, he nodded, forcing a smile, and they worked in silence until the sun dipped below the horizon. The school. Things were shifting. Lila's fierce protection had earned Elliot a few allies, kids who saw past the rumors and started sitting with him at lunch. One of them, Jamie, was a quiet junior with kind eyes and a love for poetry. He was openly bi, a rarity in Willow Creek, and his confidence intrigued Elliot. They started talking, first about books, then about their lives. Jamie's parents were supportive, a stark contrast to Elliot's past, and his stories gave Elliot a glimpse of what acceptance could look like. One day, as they sat under a tree in the school courtyard, Jamie handed Elliot a worn copy of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. "This guy got me," Jamie said, his voice soft. "Maybe he'll get you too." Elliot took the book, his fingers tracing the cover. That night, he read it in the attic, the words wrapping around him like a hug he hadn't known he needed. He started writing again, not just about pain but about hope, about the possibility of love, not just romantic, but the kind Marcus and the kids gave him. But hope was fragile. One evening, as Elliot helped Marcus with dinner, a knock at the door shattered the calm. It was Mrs. Carter, the foster agency caseworker, her face tight with concern. She'd heard about the fight with Tyler and the town's complaints. "We need to discuss Elliot's placement," she said, her voice clipped. "There are concerns about stability." Marcus's face darkened, but he kept his voice even. "Elliot's stable here. He's family." Mrs. Carter's eyes softened, but her words were firm. "I understand, Marcus, but we have to consider what's best for everyone. There's a group home in Columbus that might be a better fit." Elliot's heart sank. A group home. He'd been in one before, cold, impersonal, a place where kids like him were forgotten. He wanted to scream, to beg, but fear silenced him. He slipped away to the attic, his notebook his only comfort. Lila found him later, her eyes blazing. "We're not letting them take you," she said, her voice fierce. "You're ours." Elliot's laugh was bitter. "You can't fight the system, Lila. It always wins." She grabbed his hand, her grip tight. Then we fight harder. That night, the kids huddled in the living room, plotting like a band of rebels. Noah suggested writing letters to the agency. Emma wanted to make a video about how much Elliot meant to them. And Rosie just hugged him, refusing to let go. Marcus joined them, his face tired but determined. "We're not giving up," he said. "Not now. Not ever." Elliot looked at them, his family, his home, and felt a spark of something he hadn't dared to feel before, the strength to fight for himself. The threat of the group home loomed over Elliot like a storm cloud. But Marcus's family refused to let it break them. The kids threw themselves into their plan with a ferocity that both humbled and terrified Elliot. Lila organized a letter-writing campaign, her sharp handwriting filling pages with reasons why Elliot belonged with them. Noah, usually reserved, poured his heart into a letter about how Elliot had taught him to stand up for himself. Emma and Sam made a poster covered in glitter and rainbows, proclaiming, "Elliot is family." Rosie drew a picture of all 6 of them holding hands, her crayons smudging the edges with love. Marcus took a different approach. He spent hours on the phone with the foster agency, his voice calm but unyielding as he argued Elliot's case. He met with Mrs. Carter again, bringing a folder of school reports, teacher testimonials, and even Elliot's notebook, filled with stories that showed his resilience. "This kid's got a future," Marcus told her. "And it's here, with us." Elliot watched it all unfold, torn between gratitude and guilt. He wanted to believe they could win, but the system was a machine, cold and unrelenting. He'd seen it chew up kids like him before, spitting them out into group homes or worse. Still, the family's determination was infectious, and he found himself helping proofreading Lila's letters, teaching Emma how to spell permanent, reassuring Rosie when she asked if he was leaving the school. Jamie became a quiet anchor. Their talks grew deeper, moving from poetry to dreams, fears, and the weight of being different in a town like Willow Creek. One afternoon, as they sat in the library, Jamie reached for Elliot's hand, his touch tentative but warm. "You're not alone, you know," he said, his voice steady. "Not anymore." Elliot's heart raced, a mix of fear and something new, something that felt like possibility. He didn't pull away, but he didn't know how to respond either. Love, even the idea of it, was a risk he wasn't sure he could take. The fight for Elliot's place in the family took a turn when Mrs. Carter scheduled a home visit. The house was a whirlwind of preparation, Lila barking orders, Noah vacuuming, the younger kids scrubbing dishes with more enthusiasm than skill. Elliot helped, but his stomach churned with dread. What if they saw through the chaos to the truth, that he was a kid no one else wanted? When Mrs. Carter arrived, she was all business, her clipboard a shield as she toured the house. She asked questions about routines, school, and Elliot's adjustment. Marcus answered with quiet confidence, the kids chiming in with stories of movie nights and homework sessions. Rosie climbed into Elliot's lap, her small voice declaring, "He's my best friend." Mrs. Carter's expression softened, but she didn't make promises. "I'll submit my report," she said as she left. "We'll see what the agency decides." The waiting was agony. Elliot threw himself into his writing, filling pages with a story about a boy who found a home against all odds. It was his story, but also dream a world where love won. Jamie read some of it, his eyes bright with admiration. "You're gonna change the world with this," he said. And for the first time, Elliot believed he might. But the town's prejudice hadn't vanished. Tyler's parents rallied a group of locals to petition the agency, claiming Marcus's home was unfit for fostering because of Elliot. The rumors grew uglier, accusing Marcus of promoting a lifestyle they deemed wrong. At a town meeting, Marcus faced them head-on, his voice steady as he spoke. "Elliot's a kid, not a debate. He deserves a home, and I'm giving him one." Elliot, sitting in the back, felt his chest swell with pride and fear. Marcus was fighting for him, but at what cost? The town's judgment could tear this family apart, and Elliot couldn't bear to be the cause. That night, he found Marcus on the porch, staring at the stars. "I'm sorry," Elliot said, his voice breaking. "I didn't mean to make things harder for you." Marcus turned, his eyes fierce. "Don't you dare apologize for being you. This fight, it's worth it. You're worth it." Elliot nodded, tears spilling over. For the first time, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he was. Summer arrived in Willow Creek, painting the town in vibrant greens and golds. For Elliot, it was a season of fragile hope. The foster agency's decision was still pending, but Marcus's home remained a sanctuary. The kids filled the days with laughter and chaos, Lila blasting music, Noah building model rockets, Emma and Sam staging elaborate plays in the backyard. Rosie followed Elliot everywhere, her hand often slipping into his as they explored the park or read together. Elliot's bond with Jamie deepened too. Their friendship had grown into something more, though neither had named it. They spent afternoons by the creek, sharing stories and silences that felt more intimate than words. One evening, as the sun set, Jamie leaned in and kissed him, soft and hesitant. Elliot froze, not out of fear but from the overwhelming rush of feeling wanted. He kissed Jamie back, his heart pounding with a joy he hadn't known was possible. But joy was a fragile thing in Willow Creek. The petition against Marcus's fostering license gained traction, fueled by Tyler's parents and their allies. They claimed Elliot's presence was disruptive, a thinly veiled attack on his identity. The agency scheduled a hearing, and the weight of it pressed on Elliot's chest like a stone. He couldn't shake the fear that he'd lose everything again. Marcus prepared for the hearing like a general, gathering letters of support from teachers, neighbors, even the librarian who'd seen Elliot's passion for writing. The kids helped too, their determination fierce. Lila organized a small rally outside the agency's office, holding signs that read, "Family is love." Noah and Emma made a video, their voices trembling as they talked about how Elliot had changed their lives for the better. The hearing was a crucible. The room was packed with townsfolk, some supportive, others hostile. Tyler's father spoke first, his voice dripping with disdain as he argued that Marcus's home was no place for a kid like Elliot. The words cut, but Elliot sat tall, Marcus's hand on his shoulder a steady anchor. When it was Marcus's turn, he stood, his presence commanding. "Elliot's not just a kid we took in," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "He's our family. He's taught my kids courage, taught me what it means to fight for what's right." You want to talk about disruption? The only thing disrupting this town is hate. The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging heavy. Elliot's eyes burned. But he refused to cry. Not here. Not now. Lila squeezed his hand under the table, her fierce gaze daring anyone to challenge them. The agency promised a decision within a week. But the wait was torture. Elliot threw himself into his writing, finishing the story he'd started months ago. It was about a boy who found a home, not just in a house but in the hearts of those who loved him. He showed it to Jamie, who read it with tears in his eyes. "This is you," Jamie said, his voice soft. "This is your truth." The night before the decision, Elliot couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch, the stars above him a quiet comfort. Marcus joined him, a mug of coffee in hand. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Marcus said, "you've got us. Always." Elliot nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He wanted to believe it, but the fear of losing this family was a shadow he couldn't outrun. The next morning, the agency called. "Mrs. Carter's voice was professional but warm. "Elliot's placement with you is permanent," she said. The board was unanimous. "He's yours, Marcus." Elliot was in the kitchen when Marcus told him. The kids gathered around. The words hit like a wave, and he sank into a chair, overwhelmed. Rosie climbed into his lap, hugging him tight. "You're staying," she squealed. Lila grinned. Noah fist bumped him, and Emma and Sam cheered. Marcus just smiled, his eyes shining with pride. For the first time in his life, Elliot felt like he belonged truly, irrevocably. The agency's decision was a victory, but it didn't erase the scars Elliot carried. Willow Creek was still a town divided, and while Marcus's home was a fortress of love, the outside world remained a battleground. Elliot walked taller now, bolstered by the family's unwavering support. But the whispers and glares didn't vanish overnight. He was learning, though, that strength wasn't about being fearless, it was about moving forward despite the fear. School became a little easier with Jamie by his side. Their relationship was still new, fragile, but it grew stronger with every shared moment. They'd sit in the library, reading poetry or debating story ideas, their hands brushing as they passed books back and forth. Jamie's confidence was a beacon, showing Elliot that being himself wasn't just possible, it was powerful. Elliot's writing flourished too. He started a blog, sharing snippets of his stories online. To his surprise, people responded, not just locals but readers from across the country. Kids like him who'd felt invisible. His words became a lifeline, a way to connect with others who understood the pain of rejection and the hope of being seen. Marcus read every post, his quiet pride a steady anchor. But not everyone in Willow Creek was ready to accept him. Tyler's parents, humiliated by the agency's decision, doubled down, spreading rumors that painted Marcus as reckless and Elliot as a troublemaker. At a town fair, their hostility boiled over. Tyler's father confronted Marcus in front of a crowd, accusing him of corrupting the town's values. The words were a match to dry grass, igniting murmurs of agreement from some onlookers. Elliot, standing nearby with Lila, felt his stomach twist. He wanted to disappear, to spare Marcus this public shaming. But Marcus didn't back down. "Values," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "My values are about love, family, and doing what's right. Elliot's my son, and I'm proud of him." The crowd was split, some clapped. Others turned away, but Marcus's words rang true for those who mattered. Lila grabbed Elliot's hand, her eyes fierce. "He's right. You know, you're worth all of this." That night, Elliot wrote a blog post about the fair, pouring out the pain of being judged and the strength he found in Marcus's family. It went viral, shared by thousands who saw their own struggles in his words. Messages flooded in support, gratitude, stories of others who'd found or were still searching for their place. Elliot read them all, his heart swelling with a purpose he hadn't known he could have. Jamie helped him navigate the sudden attention, reminding him to stay grounded. "You're telling the truth," Jamie said one evening as they sat by the creek, the water reflecting the stars. "That's what matters." Elliot leaned against him, the weight of the day easing. "I couldn't do this without you," he admitted, his voice soft. Jamie smiled, his eyes warm. "Good thing you don't have to." The support wasn't just online. The school. More kids started sitting with Elliot and Jamie, drawn by their authenticity. Even Tyler's influence waned, his cruelty exposed as cowardice. The town was changing. Slowly, but it was changing. One evening, Marcus called a family meeting. The kids sprawled across the living room, Elliot included, as Marcus held up a stack of papers. "Adoption forms," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to make this official. Elliot, if you're ready." Elliot's breath caught. Adoption. It was more than a homite, was a promise. Forever. He nodded, tears spilling over as the kids cheered, piling onto him in a messy group hug. Rosie's small voice cut through the chaos. "Now you're really my brother." The paperwork was just a formality, but it felt like a triumph. Elliot was no longer temporary, no longer a guest. He was family, in every way that mattered. By fall, Elliot's life had transformed in ways he'd never dared to imagine. The adoption papers were filed, and Marcus's home was officially his. The kids celebrated with a backyard party, string lights twinkling as they danced to Lila's playlist and ate cake Rosie insisted on decorating, with far too much frosting. Jamie was there too, his hand in Elliot's, their connection a quiet strength amidst the chaos. Elliot's blog had grown into a platform for change. His stories reached thousands, sparking conversations about acceptance and resilience. Schools invited him to speak, and he shared his journey with a courage that surprised even himself. Each talk chipped away at his fear, replacing it with a belief that his voice could make a difference. Willow Creek was still a work in progress. Some residents clung to their prejudice, but others began to shift. The librarian started a book club featuring queer authors, and a few teachers wore rainbow pins. Subtle but powerful gestures. Tyler's parents moved away, their influence fading. And while Tyler himself never apologized, he kept his distance, his power broken. Elliot and Jamie grew closer, their relationship a balance of laughter and vulnerability. They dreamed together about college, about a future where they could be themselves without fear. Jamie wanted to teach, to create safe spaces for kids like them. Elliot wanted to write, to tell stories that healed. Together, they felt unstoppable. One crisp October evening, a year after Elliot had arrived, Marcus took the family to the park where they'd first met. The air was cool, the leaves a riot of red and gold. They sat on the same weathered bench. The kids sprawled on a blanket, eating popcorn and telling stories. Marcus handed Elliot a small wooden carvinga heart, etched with the word family. "You gave us something too, you know," Marcus said, his voice low. "You reminded us what it means to fight for each other." Elliot clutched the carving, his eyes tracing the faces around him, Lila's fierce grin, Noah's quiet pride, Emma and Sam's giggles, Rosie's sleepy smile. Jamie sat beside him, his shoulder warm against Elliot's. This was home. Not just a place but a feeling, one he'd carry forever. As the sun set, Elliot pulled out his notebook, the one Marcus had given him all those months ago. He wrote a final line to his story, and in the end, he wasn't just found was home. He closed the book, his heart full, knowing this was only the beginning. The world wasn't perfect, and neither was Willow Creek. But Elliot had learned that love, real love, could change anything. He'd been rejected for years, but now, surrounded by his family, he knew he was enough exactly as he was.